Hi, this is Greg Hildebrandt. I've been a professional artist for 62 years. I've done a lot of artwork in that time, and I'm still just trying to get it right.
Gregory, how are you today, sir?
Good. How you doing, Keith?
I am a little tired today, but I am doing extremely well, man.
Yeah.
So, have you had a good week so far?
Well, the week was fantastic as far as I'm concerned yesterday.
Yeah,
And it was a beautiful day. It was in the 90-minute show at the end of the day was astounding. Beautifully done.
I am going to have to check that out later. I was not able to
Yeah.
catch it live, so I'm going to tune in. So, Greg, as with every week, we start off with a quote. What do you got for us today?
If you listen to fools, the mob rules.
If you listen to fools, the mob rules. A quote
Related to
by the
this,
famous.
related to this painting, of course, which was
Yes.
the album cover for Black Sabbath's The Mob Rules, of which you
That's
know the
correct.
album. You know the album.
Yeah. And so last week, when we were talking about, the art for art's sake and talking about doing work that was non-commercial, things that were more emotional based or just creating, we we started talking about this particular painting of yours, and that has become commonly known as the mob rules. And over the course of the week, we decided that maybe we wanted to go into that a little bit more and talk about uh, what it was behind that painting, because most people that know that painting know it as the Black Sabbath, the Mob Rules album cover art. And I think that is probably actually my first exposure to your art back in, when that album came out, in the 80s, when I
Early
was
80s,
just,
1980, 81, something like that, I think.
yeah, around there. I was a little guy, but going through my dad's collection of vinyls, that album was in there. So that was
Yeah.
my first exposure to your
Mm,
stuff.
interesting.
Um, More than Star Wars or anything else
Hmm.
was through Black Sabbath. And the when you know that band or you listen to the words and things like that, you you could see why they were drawn to that image and why they wanted that image.
Hmm.
But we know now that you didn't create that for them.
No, I didn't.
You created this for you, and you gave us a little snippet of that. It was based on a nightmare that you had.
Yeah.
So why don't you go in and tell us a little bit more about that?
My God, this
What
that.
caused those nightmares?
Wow, how the hell did I begin this? Uh, I was raised a Catholic, and I was born in '39, so I grew up in the Catholic Church on the east side of Detroit in a Catholic family in the 1940s, and went to a parochial school, St. John Birchman's, run by the Servite nuns and priests. And I was a Catholic, and you're raised in this. That's all what I know. I didn't have any Protestant friends. I didn't have any Jewish friends. I didn't have any friends, gay friends for sure back in the day. Certainly no African American friends or Hispanic at all, because I lived in a white working class neighborhood back on the east side of Detroit. And the church was a traditional church, which was, I grew up growing up in school. I never heard one word about anti-racism or prejudice. The great sin was sex all the time and disobedience. Those are the two biggies. And so, I never had that sense of that or knowledge of that. And I never thought about it because I was totally into art. That's what I was into. That's all we really cared about. But I did grow up in a fear aspect of hell, because the nuns would pound this into your head, the fear of hell. If you don't do this and this, you'll go to hell. So I used to have nightmares even as a little kid about frying in hell. You know,
Oh wow.
I mean, really, today. I think you'd call that child abuse, probably. It was like terrorism, kind of. It was literally to keep control of your mind, and obey all the beliefs in the teachings. And of course, there was anti-Semitism in the teachings. and which I was unaware of. You're not aware, you're a kid. You know, the
Yeah.
perfidious Jews in the Good Friday prayers. And at the end of every mass I went to, there was a prayer for the conversion of the Jews and the prayer for the conversion of the communists. You know, they're both in your mind sort of like evil or some freaking thing,
Yes.
you
Okay.
know?
Yep.
And so I never, but you don't think about it because you're a kid and you're just raised in all this shit. And in a sense, all that bigotry and intolerance of racial intolerance is all there also because the N word was just, you know, commonly thrown around. That's just, you know, that, and it, anyway, so long story short, I mean, I'm starting to mature. I still have no knowledge of the real history of the church. I'm still very parochial and provincial until I come to New York City to work for Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. He hired Tim and me, my brother and myself, to come to make films on world hunger, which was mind blowing because I'm this naive parochial kid from Detroit. Suddenly I'm in New York and I'm dealing with the World Health Organization and UNICEF and CARE and all kinds of stuff and getting all the statistics and figures in of the global conditions. Now Bishop Sheen hired Tim and me to make films about world hunger. That was his objective. Well, he was a Catholic and lived by the rules of the church and the chain of command. He was nonetheless very open-minded in terms of social reform and anti-prejudice, you know, and anti-bigotry and anti-intolerance. And so
Okay.
through him, I'm becoming aware of the world and, in fact, the social conditions, which are so inadequate and the imbalance. Because the first film we made for him was a film called The 30th Parallel, where he narrates a line around the world of the 30th parallel, where all wealthy nations are above and poor nations are below. Well, and then he says, boys, Tim and me, he always called us the boys. I was in my 20s, you know, my early 20s. And he said, I want you to go to South America and film poverty. That was it. So we then researched it in the office, found out these Marino missionaries in Bogota, Colombia, and we went there with our equipment and everything, film, camera. Hard time getting into the country with the film. It was really a nightmare, but we finally got in, and because there was a military junta at some point, coup, and over, you know, had taken over, and we were always suspicious of being looked at. So these two white kids with all this camera equipment, and but the young priest, Father Tom, very young guy, fantastic person, but totally connected to the people. And we all going to pack up. We're going to go to a favela, a barrio outside Bogota in the hills. It's in the foothills of the Andes, you know. And so we get into the car and we drive. And I'm loading cameras and stuff, and we're driving and driving. I'm not looking till we get there, and we look out the window and we open the door, and I step outside into this horror, this mountain of misery and abject poverty. And it was fucking unbelievable, shocking. I almost passed out. The smell, the little kids running skinny or starving, you know, sores, all open trenches. There was no sanitation. They had no water supply. And they lived in these tin cardboard hut shacks. And I went in there with this young priest and Tim and I with camera equipment, shaking like crazy, filming this. And I felt like suddenly, holy, I got all this equipment and these people are starving and I'm filming them. And yet I'm trying to say, well, this is for a call. I'm going to bring this back. Anyway, we spent, then the priest, he introduces us to another priest who had started a dispensary in this particular slum. And the dispensary was not officiated by the church. It was just an individual priest that started it. He was a Peruvian priest, and Father Efio Domingo, I'll never forget his name. And he then starts to make me aware of the conditions, the social conditions. Right above this slum, there was this rich girls' school. It was above there, and they were looking down on us with all the nuns, and they were like, and the priest is saying to Tim and me, those people up there think these people are animals, subhuman. And this starts to, and then he takes us into town. Did we lose everything, or were we still talking, Keith?
Yes. Here I am. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I don't know if it
Okay.
registered,
Sorry.
but
Yeah.
I was talking about how this priest I met in this slum, right?
Yeah.
Efio Domingo was his name. Father Efio, he was a fantastic Peruvian priest. He had a dispensary in this one particular slum that we were filming for this day. And he starts to make me and Tim aware of the real situation where he said, look up on the hill up there. There's a rich girls' school on the top of the hill with these nuns looking down on this misery. And he's telling us, he's Spanish, I didn't speak Spanish. He's talking through this translator, young priest, and he's saying, look at those people up there. They think these people are animals, subhuman. I said, what do you mean, animals? No, they really think they're subhuman. And I said, what? And he says, well, through the interpreter, he took us down out of this slum. We walked through down the street. And in this slum, you see there's this big wall with these busted glass bottles along the top. And on this, that's how extreme it was in this country. I was blown away. I never saw anything like this. Extreme poverty on one side of the wall. On the other side, the oligarchy, the ruling class lived. And, middle class, nice, clean neighborhoods. And totally protected, and armed and everything. And it was really just, so he takes us down into town, and we walk around a corner, and he's looking at this magnificent 1500s beautiful building, because everybody had been there, conquistadors and everything. And he says, that's the papal nuncio's palace, the Pope's representative.
Okay.
So he's standing there. Anyway, this is getting long. I'm becoming, in other words, by the time I got back, my mind had been blown. I was no longer the same guy. And I saw this global condition of misery and poverty and extreme, and the wealth of the church. And Bishop Sheen had been talking about the wealthy church. He would constantly say stuff like, who amongst the poor would not gladly take the vow of poverty that we priests and nuns take if they could live as well, eat as well, be housed as well? So he was always doing that. And that's what that 30th parallel film that we had made before this was all about, that contrast and showing these conditions. So now I'm getting freaked out. And socially, my mind is going. I'm seeing the church as being this hideous, and I'm reading a lot. Now I'm becoming aware. I never knew about the Spanish Inquisition. Can you imagine a kid?
How old were you at this time?
23, 24.
Okay.
And I was very naive about global stuff, and so suddenly my mind blew, and then the conditions of which are happening in this country. I'd served in the army, and I was in the reserves, and I was in the reserves for 8 years, and I never was in combat, but the closest I came to combat, as it were, was in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And our unit said, go home and pack your duffel bag and get ready to leave, to take off, if you're called. And I went home and packed my duffel bag. So did Tim. And I would have gone. I would have definitely gone. If I was called, I would have gone. I mean, I would have gone into combat, whatever needed. But now I'm getting aware. I'm aware of the Vietnam War, through the news. Now I never was even thinking about it. Nobody thought about, a war being something that you could say no to. You just, you never thought in those terms, right? So all this is happening, and I'm becoming aware, and I'm meeting young people, and they're coming to me and asking my opinion about what should they do. Their conscience won't allow them, or maybe fear, or what the hell ever. And I'm trying to reason and talk and think it through. Now my mind's going, and it's coming up against the establishment, the clerical establishment, which is Cardinal Spellman in New York is waving the flag. He was Bishop Sheen's superior and completely the opposite of the bishop. And the bishop was never anti military. I mean, he certainly was a believer in Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, So there's this dichotomy. There's this conflict going on within me. You know what I mean? How can you, if you're a follower of Christ, it's a new commandment I give you, that you love one another. I started to take it really literally and started to read Gandhi, started reading more of Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk, who was isolated but connected to the world. So I'm traumatizing all over this stuff. And finally, the bishop is ousted. He's kicked out because he's too concerned about global conditions. He's not conservative enough. And this new guy takes over, and he is completely the opposite. And then there's more turmoil. Daily moment, I was really going through sweat and blood, and this came out of it. And this dream came out of all that. And to me, it was a representation not only of the church, but the global monster, the eternal Nazi, the torturer, the victimizer. So that it's not just about religion. It's politics. It's, you name it. It's the whole schmear. That's that painting. That's what that painting's all about.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you. It's always very hard to relate a dream to
You're disappearing on me, Keith. You've disappeared. Is there anybody out there? Uh, well, until Keith rejoins us, I suppose I can keep talking about this painting. This is
man when you're trying to explain it. Giggles. Oh
you.
no, or what's going on?
You're cutting out on me, Keith. You're completely gone. So I don't know. I mean, if this is still running, I suppose I should keep talking about the picture until Keith comes back. But this is the original, and so all that dream came out of what I've just said, all the internal questioning and uh, anxiety that I was going through at that time, and uh, and Keith, are you coming
Can
back?
you hear me? I'm back.
So
Can you hear me?
I tried to keep talk. I tried to keep talking a little bit while you were.
Sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on today. It figures like in the midst of the conversation, now we start freezing up. So my apologies. So I'm not sure where you went to, but if I wanted to back you up, and what I was saying is, I know it's typically very difficult to describe a dream to somebody, right? You usually sound pretty crazy when you're,
Sure.
people aren't in your imagination. But I have to ask this question: do you still remember the dream?
Yeah, vividly, as though it happened this morning, last night.
Okay.
Very clear. I was walking through all this trash and jumping, destroying like the dregs of humanity, of the edge, the fringe of the city, the run down, the discarded, the abandoned, the destroyed, the built up and then disassembled and murdered and butchered and that kind of feeling about an environment. And I'm walking through this, and I come around this corner of all this destroyed structure, and this group is standing there with this rack, with this. In my mind, I knew there was no words. There's no verbal thing. Nobody's talking to me, but I knew what it was. That rack and this skin was their last victim of these butchers, these murderers, these monsters, these destroyers, these
Okay.
crucifiers, whatever you want to call them. They did this, and I was next. And there was hardly emotion. They were kind of like hunkering around, slowly moving, that sense. And what I also knew in the dream was that all these coverings that they have are skins of all their last victims. So they're basically, and you notice it's just a black hole. There's empty. There's no faces, because all they are the victims that they have murdered over the centuries. That's what they are. That's the sense that I had about the dream. Then I woke up because it was like, you're next. You're next. Boom, I woke up. But it's that clear. And I always wanted to make a movie of it. And also that was a dream. And then I sketched it down. This would be probably 69, something like that, 70, 1969 or 70. And I didn't paint it.
How old were you then?
Well, I was born in 39. So what the hell is that? And I sketched it.
You're about 30 at this time.
Yeah. And I sketched it out. I didn't paint it because by this point I'm out of the church production of films and everything. And I'm freelancing with my brother, just doing general illustration. You name it, everything. Children's books, Reader's Digest illustrations, believe it or not. Down to the toilet training book that I did. And I all through this period where I was illustrating to make a living, because this new regime, the bishop really liked what we did. He loved the work that we did, and we loved and admired him. The new regime was just the opposite, and they fired us because we went to West Africa to make a film for them. This new guy wanted us to do a film on missionary activity in Africa, and we were just supposed to go make a propaganda film, basically. And we got there with all of our equipment, and we just got connected with the reality of Africa, West Africa in this case, and that's a whole other story. That's a
So
whole other story.
Did this dream come before Africa, or was it also post Africa?
It was probably after Africa, because by this point, when I went to Africa, that's right, I didn't have a beard yet. This would be 69. I went to Africa, West Africa, Ghana, West Africa. And I didn't have a beard yet. That's why I started to grow my beard. And so I think it was after I had the beard that I remember that, because I remember getting on the train then back. You got to get how it was back then. You know, the guys that were growing beards, even. You didn't even have long hair. I wore a suit and tie every day, and I had a beard. These guys who never looked at anybody on the PATH trains, or, you know, on my sojourn into this, my commute into the city, they buried their faces in their Wall Street journals. You know, they ran into those chairs, bam, grab those seats so that no woman could eat them. No woman would stand there in front of them, and these pricks would sit there buried in their newspapers. They never looked at anybody till I came on board with a beard. And they're staring at me with looks of hate. And when I got back to the office after Africa, there were very conservative people there. And they said, "Ooh, that looks properly sinister." That one, it sticks in my mind. And I said, "Well, doesn't Jesus have a beard? Didn't he have long hair? You freaking idiot. It grows on your face. It's unnatural to cut it off. It's natural to just let it go." You know what? I'm like that now, you see?
Yeah.
All that, down to this kind of shit. Another guy had stuck up on his wall proper haircuts. He was in the military, and he had military haircuts. That's what he said. We all should have haircuts like this in this office. And, you know, it was like pretty amazing. I mean, so that we were showing them the Africa footage, but we had also collected a bunch of footage in Africa of, I don't want to even get into that. That's a whole, let's keep that for another show, because it's just, that's a long one. That's a detailed, you know, accounting, you know. But so I had the dream about them, and did a bunch of sketches. I didn't paint it yet, though. So I didn't paint it till, what the hell, when was it? 71, 72, somewhere in there, when I was doing all this general illustration now to make a living after we got booted out by this new regime. And I just, for all those years, we did that for about 7 years, and I just felt like I wasn't achieving or doing anything with art, or making a statement, or do something, you know. And so I found my sketches in a drawer and started to paint it one night, just to get it out of my system. And with the idea just to get it down, just to get the picture down, just to get the thing out of my system. And Keith has disappeared again, so we're having a little communication problem here. So I don't know whether this is still live, being new to this or not. In any event, I sat and I started painting this, and I pretty much kept at it till I finished it. And it was painted on a piece of illustration board with acrylic. I use washed acrylic as a wash, not so. It's a little bit opaque on it, but mainly it's washed all on. And my idea or objective was to eventually paint it big. I wanted to paint a big, huge picture of it, which I still is in my mind. I have not gotten around to it after, you know, all these years. One of these days I will. But that's kind of like the history of that painting. So Keith has disappeared. The thing now, talking about this.
Hey, Greg.
We're back again. I just kind of like went on and talked. I don't know whether it still registers. When you disappeared, do I disappear?
Yeah, you still register. I'm sorry. I got to apologize. I'm screwing up the stream over here this week, man. I don't know what's going on with my system.
Well, I kind of like talked about
phone. Everything is frozen.
Yeah,
Go
are
ahead.
you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think I talked a little bit I don't about on how I had gotten fired by this new regime because they were completely the opposite of the bishop, and we did not get
Yep.
agree at all. And they hated the film that we cut together, and they fired us. And then I started general illustration to make a living, which I was instantly got into. Tim and I both did in the city in New York. We worked for Golden Books and all Macmillan, you name it, Reader's Digest, everybody. And then, but I was feeling totally unfulfilled. I was doing jobs and just making a living doing illustration. And it was not something that I'd just come out of this whole period in my life where I had this sense that I was doing something, making some kind of
Yes.
contribution, maybe making a difference in the world. You know what I'm saying? That kind of feeling. And it was really
Yes. Yeah.
that was very important to me and huge and big and all encompassing. And then when you're booted out, now I'm sitting there in this two-family house that I then lived in, and it had a tiny little closet-sized studio all by myself. And I know what people must feel like once they're blasted out and you feel like you're doing something important over here. Now you're out in the street, basically, in a sense, and with nowhere to go. So instantly, but I had, fortunately, Tim and I had called some art directors in the city. We were making, but still there was no unfulfillment with about 7 years of illustration that we were now doing. And I just had to get it out. So I pulled these sketches out of the drawer that I'd done years before and painted that one night, started painting it just because I felt I had to do it. It was, that
Okay.
compulsion thing.
Yeah,
And
you said no. You had done the sketches years before. What's the time frame of the? Do you have any recollection, like how many years had passed, or?
if I did the sketches, probably 60, 70, 71, somewhere there. I probably did it, the painting in 72, 3, 4, somewhere in that, before Tim and I started illustrating the Lord of the Rings. And
Okay.
so, no, it was earlier than that because it triggered off a whole series of paintings that I was doing, dream stuff. It was probably 72, 71 that I did it. Yeah. Right after I left there in 1969, they kicked us out. So it was probably there, in that time frame.
So you've now lost your identity, right? You said you were
Yep.
raised Catholic. You were there uh, into the faith. For lack of a better term, or however you want to say it, indoctrinated into the faith at
Hmm.
birth. It was everything you knew. You explored the world. You're now open to atrocities that are in direct conflict with what you know.
Yep.
You begin having nightmares about it. Now, we had talked about you having a few dream paintings. Was this the first nightmare,
Yeah. That was the very
or
first one. The first one
this the
that,
very,
well,
very first one?
the first one that I can recall about this,
Okay.
and then the first that I can say that I did a sketch on, and then finally this painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Now you got.
you
Can
now
I? I'm going to stick something in here though. In my turmoil with the church does not imply that I did not know a bunch of great Catholics, fantastic human beings, incredible, you know, and still
yeah,
do.
no, you
So
yeah,
that's,
you've
I want to make that
insinuated
real
that.
clear.
Yeah, and it's been very clear that you still admire Bishop
Oh
Sheen.
God, yes, I love him. He was an
You know,
amazing human being.
um, but there was obviously, with the regime change,
Yep.
there came a
Well,
conflict.
yeah. I mean, the directive to the New York and Detroit riots had just occurred. The whole racial thing that was going on, and the guy, the layman, came in to back to Tim and me and says, "We're not using any colored people in any promotion material anymore." You know, it was like, not to say that that was the policy of this particular operation. It was this one man. You know,
Yeah,
but it's true here. Through that same office, working for Bishop Sheen, and about the Vietnam War, where I was becoming aware of not only the body counts every day on television, but we were dealing with photo services like Black Star and Magnum. These were photo services where I would get stills for the movies I was making. I would use movies and still footage where I would stills where I would pan in and zoom across. And I'm seeing these pictures coming in of these napalmed kids, and I didn't know what the hell it was at first. I mean,
yeah,
what is, you find out this is like word drop. the U.S. is dropping this stuff, and kids are getting napalm. You know what it is. We all know what it is.
Yeah.
And this is freaking me the hell out. I think seeing these napalm kids pictures is what really blew my lid about war for the first time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not this Hollywood fucking version of John Wayne movie shit. Not this rah 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 crap. You know what I mean? The horror of the reality of it with these kids. And that was it for me. That just added to the whole thing. And I introduced that into this last film that Tim and I made under Bishop Sheen's directive. It was called We Are One. He said, I want to make a film aimed at American teenagers to let them become aware. Now this is he said that in 1967. Well, the whole country is going crazy. American teenagers, college campuses, the whole anti-war demonstrations, everything. And so we did make a film. And it's one of my prouder things that I've ever done in my life. It's not narrated. All the other films we did for the Bishop were narrated. He said, make one for the kids. And so we started to glue this together of all the footage we'd shot already, or collecting new footage, poverty, the reality of America, all juxtaposed in this free-flowing juxtaposition of real sound Foley track that we created too, that we needed when we needed real sound, and then real sound and music that we would record on the scenes, like in Washington Square Park and all over the place. And we edited this film together, and in there I included these napalm kids to just kind of like, just fast cuts of all kinds of stuff going on. And collagey, it was very collagey, you know what I mean? That whole time frame of the 60s.
Yeah.
And they saw this. Rich got booted out, and we were finished it under this new regime, and we had a rough screening for them, interlock screening, which is a whole other story to explain what that is, of our rough soundtracks and our work print. And they freaked out. They hated it. The other people in the office talked them into screening it for a bunch of high school kids, Catholic high school kids. We did, and they went nuts for it because it's 1967, 68, you know what I mean? 67.
Yeah.
In any event, so this awareness is all within me, and I made this film, and I still have a copy of it. Hopefully we'll get it out someday, and yeah, I don't know. I kind of.
That's fine. That's
but
interesting. You're painting. You're painting for us the mental picture of what, because this wasn't a normal nightmare. That painting's not like, oh, I had a bad dream. No, you're painting for us your life experience of what caused these nightmares.
Yeah.
And so it's important that you fill in those details of what you are actually experiencing, and not that it's just another bad dream, or I watched a horror movie and then I had a dream about these guys.
Right.
No.
Right.
What you're telling us is that you were woken up to the realities of the world.
Basically, that's it right there.
You had lived a very sheltered life, and then all of a sudden you were open up to the realities of the world. And then once you started exposing those realities, you got kicked to the curb by the institution that you identified yourself as.
In a sense, yes, exactly what happened.
Right. So
right.
You're telling me, you said getting into the art making process, you're starting into your commercial illustration field now, the toilet train and all that. And you said you weren't feeling fulfilled by that. It wasn't, you weren't expressing yourself the way you needed to. So then you went back to these sketches and you started to paint.
Started the painting, did the painting in that, like I said, one year, 71, 72, somewhere in there. Years go by. I mean, I'm illustrating now. That sat there. And then I started a series of other paintings, though, in the meantime. Another dream that had to do with the church. We'll talk about that one some other time, but it's another, for lack of a better term, surrealistic dream of, again, a garbage dump. It's always seems to be that when I have these dreams like that. There's always this trashy world, everything's destroyed and everything. And of this figure hauling this cross through all this trash, and there's this Jesus on the cross, but that's another story. I don't want to blow it now because we can show that painting too, because there's a lot of
yeah. But in essence, there you're saying is, okay, this is the first in a series of paintings that you based on emotions and nightmares and things that fueled You know,
social
you're
right, the events of the world, what's happening in terms of war and racism and all of that is all coming into this, as opposed
so
to doing the jobs of illustrating a job for a cover or for whatever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So getting into a little bit of the technical aspect of this painting. So the the one thing that strikes me as completely different than most of the commercial work we know of yours is the medium.
Medium and
You
color, right?
paint, yeah, you painted this in watercolor,
Well,
which
acrylic used as a watercolor,
okay,
basically.
so it is thin down
Yeah,
acrylic.
yeah, thinned out acrylic itself, but used as watercolor. So
Yeah,
the piece of illustration board. The way I started this was I kept away from this area right here, but I washed a layer of Payne's gray on the whole thing first because I wanted it grayed down. I didn't want any. There's no intense color about this thing. It's not black
yeah,
and white, but you wanted it earthy, earth stuff. You know what I mean? Just
yeah.
nothing bright. And then painted the rack with the skin with the blood on it. It's all stretched and as though it's been flogged and whipped and beaten. And then there's all kinds of stuff, symbolism, and there's Nazi helmets, and there's all furnaces and all kinds of shit in the background. You know what I'm saying? Which
So
is,
yeah,
I don't remember. The thing is, when I do these dream things, they start off as you can see the whole setup. You know how it is through a glass darkly,
yeah, yeah.
and then once you get into it, stuff starts to come more clear. It's really kind of interesting. And you're now you're becoming, as you're doing this thing from your subconscious, unconscious mind into the conscious world. The conscious world is starting to play with it a little bit also. Oh, I started it out of the feeling of what it was, and as I moved into it, I understood it more and more as I painted it. I
Yeah.
understood what it was more and more. And it's the same with the other paintings that I did in this same ilk.
Yeah,
As I painted them, I got them more and more as I painted them.
you began to be able to interpret your subconscious, right? Is that what you're saying? Like your thoughts and
Yeah, have it. I guess interpret. Yeah, understand it. The subconscious. I mean, yeah, that's how Dali painted, right from his unconscious. He'd lay down, and when that your conscious state is leaving and your subconscious is merging, and then you right there. That's when he would sketch his
yeah,
ideas down. And that I don't know. I guess I don't know if it happens to you. It happens to me all the time. Now I can almost like at a certain point, if I lay down on a couch, empty your mind. Don't try to think about it, anything. Suddenly, something that has just whoop, it's totally crazy. It's great.
just comes out. So one thing I do want to point out in that looking at the painting and then looking at that album cover, on the album cover in the middle of that flesh stretcher there in the middle, on the album there's like a demon skull in the
Right.
red, but I don't see it in the painting.
No, and also there's a hook here. See, I don't know if you can see it there. It's like just a hook on the chain. There's no overt religious things in there. They Okay, I got to tell the story of it though, because here now segue why? Because years go by. Now I go through illustrating. Tim and I do the Lord of the Rings. We get famous. We do all that. We got a fandom now, and then we do our own story, Ursharak, and then we do the Star Wars poster, and then I'm trying to get Ursharak off the ground as a movie. I fail at it. It doesn't work, and suddenly now I'm kind of like looking around. There, I'm up the creek without a paddle. I met Jean. She saved my ass totally. From it's a whole other story.
Yep. Yep.
It's a whole other big story. But we were just starting to work together. She's my rep. She's Tim's rep at the same time. Both of us. And she calls me, and one night I'm in my studio, and we're separate. We weren't living together. She was married. I was married separately, and she calls and said that how Jean.
What?
How did you exactly say it to me? I'm asking Jean right now.
About what?
About when the Black Sabbath called you.
Oh, I got a call from Black Sabbath's manager. They wanted to license the Crucifier's painting, they saw it in the art book.
Right. So Ballantyne, but after we did the Lord of the Rings, Ballantyne Books did an art book on Tim and me, along with a bunch of other art that we had done. This was in that art book also.
Okay.
Jean just told me Black Sabbath's manager called her, and they saw the book, with that painting, with this painting in it, and asked if they could use it for this album cover. And she called me, and I said, "Oh, no way, no, it's too personal. This is not commercial. This is not to be used for anything." She said, "Okay." She hung up on me and said yes to them. So I kind of freaked out, but I calmed down. I said, well, "All right, fine, okay." It's like you go nuts, and then I can have I don't know, but I can have a real strong opinion almost at the beginning of a sentence. By the time I get to the end of it, I've completely changed my mind. It just turns into,
Yeah, I get that.
oh, okay. What am I
Yeah, well,
bitching
it's
about?
that immediate gut reaction.
Right.
But being able to temper it,
Well, by this point, I'm a professional. I mean, I wasn't like I've been a professional now since 1958. So it's not like I'm,
Yes.
oh no.
Wow, is it really that easy?
No, Gene says it wasn't that easy. So, but I did freak out. But then finally I settled down to the degree, to answer your question, where Gene's telling me, oh, they want an overlay. They want you to paint a devil face in here. And then they want a cross over here where the hook is. And then they want lettering, like it's painted on the walls. And I can't remember exactly. Did I bitch and moan about that?
Yeah.
Probably did.
Yeah.
Probably, you know what I mean? I threw a fit and went crazy and said no. And
I said, give them what they want.
Gene said, give them what they want. So after I go through all the crap, settle down, get a piece of acetate, lay it over the top of the whole thing, tape a piece of acetate, and paint on the acetate. Paint the devil, paint the lettering, do all that stuff on a piece of acetate, which I don't have anymore. And that's how Gene then got it shot. Normally I was painting all my paintings, and before Gene, I'd take all my paintings and drop them off to the publisher in New York, and they would make all the color separations and shoot them in transparencies and everything, and then keep the paintings too. But this is the beginning of me keeping everything that I did because of Gene, keeping all my work. Yeah. But that's how that worked. And then it goes out, and I guess people like it. I'm starting to get fan mail from Black Sabbath fans, And I figure, oh, well, I guess that's cool. You know what I mean?
Well,
people
are now, I mean, it is. I grew up, I'm a heavy metal fan.
Yep.
I like all types of music, but metal is, one of the things that I listen to, and it is universally recognized as one of the best album covers of all time.
Well, here's this cool. I'm just like FX Magazine.
Yes. Yep.
They had a thing on, like the top 10 heavy metal. So they 10 down to 9 to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So they voted this the best heavy metal album cover of all time. And I just think it's kind of interesting that it per se had nothing to do with Black Sabbath. It did, in a sense. You know what I mean? The piece of music is certainly all about that.
I think
you listen to Fools, The Mob Rules. I mean, that's everything that I was experiencing.
Yeah, and you're painting. I think what maybe captures it so well. It captures the essence of the band. Not because you were trying to capture the band, but the same thing they're going after and same thing they're trying to capture or expose is the exact same thing that you were exposing.
Well, that kind of synchronicity, is there. You know what I mean? There's a global kind of like network of consciousness, I think, and that people interconnect at the same time, it's like that, and there's a universal well, what is it? The universal. Carl Jung talked about that. The universal unconsciousness. And
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
and yeah, so they were, we were same wavelength, sort of like thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're when they were a band. I mean, this particular album was like their second album with Dio,
Right.
other than Ozzy.
Right.
But when that band formed, was the exact same time that you were going through the stuff in South America
Yeah.
and then Africa, and they have a lot of Catholic imagery. Everybody kind of associates, oh, it's devil music or
Sure.
whatever. But when you listen to the lyrics, they're
It's not devil
yes,
music.
it's not devil music. It's only devil music in the sense that they bring up a lot of Catholic imagery and they question Catholic imagery in their music.
Right.
So,
well, it's like I have to say, yeah, no, you're going to finish your thought.
no, go ahead.
As much as I did leave religion and the church, I really am thankful for that kind of imagery that I grew up with. It's like
very rich.
It's loaded. Come on, it's fantastic. Evil spirits and the devil and angels battling in heaven and casting down into. I mean, it's like great. It's like come on, most phantasmagorical images these days in fantasy are all derived from that whole,
Absolutely.
story.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
So yeah, sorry. I'm gonna ask you one more question then. So, they asked you to do the overlays, so the devil skull is not on the original picture. The crucifix is not on the original picture, obviously not the title. Did they ask you to put Die Ozzy on?
I think it's either Kill Ozzy or I think it's Kill Ozzy.
Yeah,
No. There was is it? I don't know which something like that. Whatever.
Ozzy must die.
Ozzy must die. Ozzy kill Ozzy. Something like that. Someone from the fan site some years ago, way after the album's out, it's been out for God knows how 20 years or what the hell, calls and says, they want to do an interview with me about this painting, and then he asked me, this is over the phone, so you can't see each other or anything. So he says, "Can you tell me about why is Kill Ozzy in the painting?" I said, "What?" He said, "Kill Ozzy. You painted in the bottom of the picture, somewhere over here, somewhere that he's telling me down in the bottom right hand corner." I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "What?" It says Kill Ozzy in there. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't know Ozzy. I didn't know heavy metal from a tin can back then. I had no knowledge of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said to the guy, I was listening to, rock and roll. Yeah, but I mean, I wasn't like a guy that was into who did everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I wasn't.
yeah.
I turned to 104.3 on the radio and listened to classic rock and roll, or when I wanted, turn it over to the classic station, listen to Beethoven.
Yeah. So, okay. So
he
it's
says,
neither on the painting nor the acetate.
It's not there.
No.
And so he said, well, go to the website. And I said, and Gina and I are together now by this point in time. And she looked it up, and there it was. They have it like circled over here, Kill Ozzy or Ozzy Must Die or something. They got all circled. That's like, like you can look at clouds and see things in the clouds, and you can look at leaves on trees and patterns and see. It's like that. Somebody can read into anything. And the guy was really kind of disturbed on the phone. He says, well, what should I do? And I said, did you ever see the film The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance? He said, no. I said, I tried to give him a brief rundown of it. It's the Jimmy Stewart character is a doctor who supposedly shoots Liberty Valance from the shadows, but he isn't. It's the John Wayne character who shoots him from the shadows. And Jimmy Stewart gets the credit for killing the archetype bad guy, Liberty Valance, and builds up into a political career and becomes a whole Washington, a senator and everything. But it comes down to a newspaper reporter talking with a guy and revealing what really happened, and perplexed. What should I print? Well, when faced with printing the myth or the truth, print the myth.
No, the legend.
The legend.
Print the legend. So I have another. I got a question regarding the business aspect of this. So, I mean, obviously, they're a massive band, right? I know they went through a slump for a while, but with in the '90s they brought back the Ozfest, and Ozzy Osbourne became very popular, and Black Sabbath got together.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the largest bands. Like, are you still making money off of that album cover?
No, 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 no. We made the first whatever it was that Gene agreed to, whatever I got for it. First of all, that's it. So, and they really had no right to do that, even though here's the rare thing too. Generally speaking, we can't find the contract on it that we had, and so therefore, what can you do? They've used it over and over again. They've used it on, projected on the, on screens on the stage and everything, and they used it again. A reissue of the album, I think, right?
Yep.
No, haven't made one penny
So
off of it.
you don't get any cut of any of
Nope.
the licensing or the
Nope.
merch or anything like that.
Not a
And
penny.
now, is it,
I guess the mob ruled.
to your knowledge, was it in the initial contract?
I don't remember. Gene probably, would remember that more than me.
What was the question?
What was the question? Keem, what was the question?
Gene, was licensing in the original contract?
Was licensing in the original contract?
Okay, you're not talking about licensing, Keith. You're talking about merchandising. So
Yes.
I licensed them the rights to use the piece of art on the Mob Rules album cover and to advertise the Mob Rules album. That's what the license was for. No merch.
Mm,
And they have been merching it ever since.
But
Successful.
ever since.
yeah,
And the only reason, just so you know, we don't have that contract is because the offices were broken into, oh God, about 18 years ago. And it was just, I guess, some kids trying to, destroy shit just for the, shits and giggles. And
Yeah.
they stole a bunch of stuff, and that file was one of the things they stole.
Oh dear God.
That's the
sucks.
only contract I don't have of Greg and Tim's for 41 years.
Oh my God.
yes, the mob won out.
That's horrible. So we got a couple people, get a few people watching and chiming in on the commentary. So just acknowledge them before we sign
Yes.
off. William Call. Do you remember William Call? He said he posed for you back in Morris Plains. This is Steffi. It's Terry's son, Bill.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Many moons ago. Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Hey,
Great
man.
to see you again. We have Burn Phillip saying it's great to hear the background to this painting. And then we got Henry Molina saying that you're a fantastic artist and you have beautiful works. They can only dream of achieving something similar. So yes, keep dreaming.
Keep dreaming.
And you will. That's what this whole thing is
Yo.
about, right? Dream.
Well, it's like I tried to make a go of it, like the gallery routine in New York City before I illustrated the rings finally with these paintings, and it wouldn't work with anybody. It just they weren't interested.
I think, yeah. I think times have changed now.
I think so.
I know that you've had several gallery shows.
Oh yeah. No, times definitely have changed. Yeah.
Since then, but I think the work that people are willing to show has shifted over the years, and I don't know, man. I think it would be good to see some of these things up. And,
Well, the thing is too is like I like to paint some more because in all these years I have uh, piles of concepts and ideas and thought, not only concepts but images that have come to me out of what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through, and I'd like to at some point get to that. It's like that's around the bend. You know what I mean? That's always out there that I want to get to.
well, I, for one, think it would be absolutely worthwhile for you to do so. I mean, we've seen the outcome of
Yeah.
what that can bring, there is the validity in capturing the artist's mind. There's the creative artist that works, which brought us that painting behind you, and then there's the artists for hire, which we also do to make money.
Yeah, that's a whole separate. There are two different worlds. I mean, you're
Two
both
different worlds, but
two different worlds.
they can overlap, and
Yes, absolutely.
you've given the world a painting there that is superb.
Well, thanks, Peter.
Now,
Well, for me, it's one of the things that's the most meaningful to me personally. Obviously, I won't sell it, and not only because of the experience that I went through back in the day, and that it all came out of that, and that it's my life, but I mean, just looking at it as a work of art, totally separate from experience, my experience, and seeing the composition, the setup. For me, it's more successful than most things that I painted. Certainly, the more hyper recognizable one that everybody keeps. Oh, you did the poster. You know what I mean? But first of all, that wasn't my poster. It was Tom Young's to start off with. I did my take. Tim and I did our take, but it was Tom's poster. Great poster painter. Great poster painter. But this is me, and that's always the one that you're.
Yep, it's you.
Yep.
And it's terrifying, man. Now, was this we had a very brief conversation that I just want to touch on quickly. Was this the final?
No. That's what this. I look at that. Once I started it that night, I started that night in 1971 tour, and no. I painted. I kept at it until I finished it, but it was almost like just to get it out of my system, and I had the sense, the idea that I wanted to really pursue it, take it like big. Now paint it big, paint it seriously, paint it like huge, almost life size. That sense, and I might do that. It's always been there. And all this other stuff arises, and you're working on all kinds of a million different things. I'd like to go back and not back, but take it on now. That subject, using that composition, that setup.
Would you? I mean, you would only know once you got into it, but would you try to apply the exact same techniques and everything, like to just recreate that much larger, or would you envision going after it in a different way?
I'd go after it a different way. I'd opaque it on a canvas. It would be not I mean, I'd be using wash and opaque and, working it just like a painting, straight ahead painting with, thick and thin and all of it, not just as a wash type thing. No. I did that already there. I don't want to do that again. It would have to be a completely different way to handle it,
Okay.
Well, and the danger of that, of course, is like with when Diego Rivera repainted his mural at the one that they bashed off the walls at the Rockefeller Center, and he went back to Mexico and painted it. To all what I've read about, people observing it, it never made it to that original in New York City, because they had
recaptured the magic.
It just didn't. It was the composition was all there, the information was all there, but there was something that was lacking in it. That's the problem if you go to redo something. I don't know. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm saying that,
But there's the danger. You said
there's a danger.
And because the same energy is not necessarily behind the brush strokes.
Right, but here's the only difference there, I guess, or maybe not with him though. Maybe with him too. I don't know. With me, the mob is still ruling. It's still going on. This mentality is still there, as big as ever.
If not bigger.
If not bigger. So from that point of view, it would be not about now too. I mean, it wouldn't be. It's not the past. It's the present. Yeah. So that would make the difference for me, because I could get into it on that level now of the awareness of what's happening all around us.
I for one would be incredibly interested in seeing that, and seeing the take that you would have now where you're at in your life, but from that concept that sprung forth 50 years ago.
Yeah. The again, like I called him back then, the eternal Nazi. They
Yeah.
seem to have been there from the beginning of time, huh? I guess when Cain killed Abel.
Yeah, it's the seed of evil, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's there. All right, man. So that is going to bring us to the end of our conversation. As always, it's been fun in spite of my couple moments of freezing up. But
oh,
hey, man, thank you so
my
much.
cat just jumped up here. Oh my God. Hey, buddy, you trying to get out of the act here?
Always great with when the kitty
This is
cat
Clyde.
makes an appearance.
His sister Bonnie is running around somewhere.
Yeah, Clyde had to say hi last week too. But man, I got to say, thank you so much for
Keith,
giving us some of that background.
Gene,
Truly appreciate it.
Clyde jumped up on this thing. I don't know what he did. I can't hear you.
Oh no, he hit mute.
Clyde jumped up on here and screwed up stuff. So Keith is not.
Not a clue, Keith. You're live, but I don't know where you went.
Okay.
What did he hit? What did he hit?
I don't know.
I think it's time to
Mute.
end.
Yeah, but he's got to do his advertising thing.
Okay. Well, he's
Next time.